What's up, troops? It's me, the Tactical Brit, and we're around that time of the year now where people start throwing out 101 videos, hell, 1001 videos on what Battlefield 2018 is going to look like. It's the sort of post-Battlefield 1 preemptive stage where people are just looking towards the next game, wondering what it's going to be about, hoping to see some kind of leak maybe, and just awaiting for that first official confirmation on what we're going to see. I have no doubt that it's probably only a month away before we have some kind of teaser trailer or something even tiny and small to give us an impression of what we might be facing for the next Battlefield title. And because of that, I felt like it was important today to talk about some of the things we most certainly need in Battlefield 2018. I'm going to go over 3 or 4 things today that I feel are integral to making Battlefield 2018 as successful a title as it can be, and a lot of this is going to be looking at previous titles and previous iterations and just looking at them and saying what could we do better in terms of improving the next generation of Battlefield. So to kick it off with, this one is mostly a gripe with Battlefield 1. Now, gunplay in my opinion and just general satisfaction of playing Battlefield 1 has been really low for me. It's been low for a lot of players, I feel. And a lot of that, I feel, is to do with the chaotic elements of Battlefield 1 and the lack of predictability surrounding gunplay. Now, this isn't a slap on the wrist to DICE developers, because those guys work their asses off, and the historical time frame for Battlefield 1 did make it incredibly difficult to craft a sort of dynamic gunplay system into the game, and I totally understand that. But in terms of outplaying and being more skillful than your opponent when approaching an engagement, I feel that that's more or less reached a low point in the Battlefield franchise. I feel as though in Battlefield 1, the chaotic elements of the game, the lack of predictability surrounding the map environments we find ourselves in, and the lack of predictability with the guns that we find ourselves faced with, like random bullet deviation, make it almost impossible to have a satisfying experience because you never really truly feel like you're in control of what's going on. In Battlefield 3 and Battlefield 4, it was very easy to use map knowledge and navigation of maps alongside the weapons that you had and know well in order to outperform other players, be it through headshots, be it through engagements that you approached in your own dynamic ways that you felt were important, or whether it was just being intelligent, like waiting to reach a certain distance before taking someone on, or, you know, knowing that they're going to go around a certain corner on part of a map and you can cut them off this way. That made the engagements really important, and I think it made the gunplay significantly more satisfying in Battlefield 1, because we find ourselves in a situation where chaotic elements like grenades, random explosives, maps being so vastly open in terms of lack of cover and lack of alleyways and pathways, that not enough is left down to the player to determine how a gunplay or situation will unfold. It would just be a simple case of potentially random elements completely over-ensuing the general situation you find yourself in. And I think that's really sucky at the moment. Like, it's not something I've enjoyed in Battlefield 1. You know, there'll be times where I drop 2 or 3 people, and the time to kill update did kind of improve this, but ultimately I'd always end up being sniped by somebody 500 miles away, blown up by a tank, a gas grenade would murder me, an incendiary grenade I'd step on would probably fry me alive, and there just wasn't enough predictive elements for me to feel as though I could change those outcomes or feel like I could do better. And I think games like PUBG and Fortnite and Rainbow Six Siege and these really competitive environment shooters are doing so well because the satisfaction in-game and able to predict your outcomes and being able to outplay your opponents is what's making people come back. And I feel like we need that to return in Battlefield 2018. The next one I'm going to mention is RSP. Now, the server-side thing of Battlefield 1 wasn't that great. It took a long time for features to come to Battlefield 1 that we had previously in BF4 and BF3, and I can understand the idea of making everything all-inclusive and under one ship and under one element, but unfortunately the lack of features has really hit a lot of communities hard. Battlefield has always thrived because there have been communities around that sustain the game for much longer than they should have. It's the reason you can still find Battlefield Bad Company 2 games now. It's the reason most Battlefield and previous titles are still populated today, because communities will keep them alive and they will sustain them and they will invest tons and tons of time and money into them. And they need to be able to do that again in the next Battlefield title with a fully optimal RSP system that gives them more or less any selection of things under the sun that they want to do. Let them mess around with things, let them make their own servers, let them throw in wacky rules, and just let people enjoy the game however they choose to please or do so. It also allows things like cinematic servers to be alive and kicking, it allows things like custom game modes to be alive and kicking, and it just keeps things a lot more interesting for a lot longer a time. The next one for me is DLC. Now, DLC is likely going to return to the next Battlefield. It will likely also be under a premium system. We don't know the full details of it yet, but I'd be very surprised if they stepped away from that. But what I'd much rather see in the next Battlefield game is DLC that is more intelligent, more fun, and a lot more different to what we expect. I think Battlefield 3, in my opinion, had the best run of DLC that we saw in a while, like Aftermath and Close Quarters, because the thematic elements of the DLC worked really well, worked hand in hand, and just gave everybody a douse of a different experience every time you picked up a different DLC. Now, Battlefield 1 did some good steps towards that. The different armies, the different uniforms, the different weapons and locations definitely gave a really good feel to the game, but a lot of people, by the time the DLCs had come out, had already kind of lost hope with the terms of sort of things they would find in trouble with, like time to kill, or servers, or, you know, general gameplay and gun satisfaction. And because of that, a lot of the DLC wasn't appreciated as much as it should have been. But if we can get a game that comes out strong and has a really in-game satisfying experience, and then hits us hard with some really good DLC that has its own themes and own locations, I think Battlefield 2018 could be one of the best since Battlefield 3 or Bad Company 2, if it's able to hit that out of the ballpark straight away. A strong DLC lineup is something that almost most Battlefield players anticipate, and a lot of people will always say, oh yeah, I hate premium, or I hate this, blah blah blah. But at the end of the day, as Battlefield players, we actually chug down a hell of a lot of content in a short space of time. It's something we anticipate, it's something we want. And I think if they do it better this time, I think more people will be susceptible to actually purchasing them. The final one for me is kind of a mixture of things, actually. It's just some things that I feel like should have been in Battlefield a long time ago. Things that probably should have been introduced to the game. And some of these are simple, some of them are very complicated. But, you know, that's just how prospects of a YouTuber who thinks they know what development looks like is about. The first one for me is customization. I really hate that this doesn't exist in Battlefield. Like, there are a lot of games it doesn't exist in, and I get that. And even games like Squad and Rainbow Six and PUBG that I've had a lot of fun with have very minimal or even sometimes no customization elements whatsoever. But being able to make your own character feel like your own, being able to make them have costumes or certain layouts and stuff, is great, and I really do appreciate that. Being able to just have that kind of authenticity of this is my dude and I'm going to run around with him and look cool as shit, it is really good to have. And I'm kind of disappointed we haven't seen it in Battlefield 1, and I'd be really disappointed if we don't see it in Battlefield 2018. We don't need ridiculous things like bright pink suits and stuff, or like running around wearing some golden armor or whatever. Just some militaristic options that would look cool and authentic would really add another layer to the game. And the final one is kind of a weird one, but I think it's important in Battlefield, is dynamic weather. Now, we saw things like Levolution take place, we saw night maps and things like that, but it'd be really cool to have maps that could just alternate between loads of different weather environments, be it a snowy map, or a stormy map, or a nighttime, daytime, or dusk map. Being able to have a game that can have one map look lots of different ways is really important. It's one of the things I really enjoy about Squad at the moment, is that, you know, there are maps that are at dawn, there are maps that are at dusk, there are maps that have snow on them, there are maps that don't have snow on them, and they can be the same map, and they can have the same layout, but it gives each and every one of them a different feel and a different look. I know it's not a simplistic ask. Frostbite is a very complicated and complex engine, and we saw how long night maps took in terms of restructuring lighting and shadows and everything under the sun to make it look right. But I feel as though if that was successful, it would almost add a 3 times layer to the game where one map can feel like 5, and that's only ever a good thing. So guys, that's about it for my list for Battlefield 2018. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. As always, it's been me, the Tactical Brit, and thank you for watching.